celebrations in Germany to mark an anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. After the end of the Second World War, this city became the front line for a different kind of war, the Cold War. For nearly 40 years, Europe was divided between the democracies of the West and the communist states of the East, and Berlin was where the two sides met. When Nazi Germany was defeated in 1945, Berlin was divided up into four parts by the Allied powers and the Soviet Union. As post-war Germany started to rebuild, two countries were formed from the rubble: a free market and democratic West Germany and a communist-controlled East Germany under the influence of Russia. Despite growing tensions between West and East Berlin, Berliners were able to move between the two halves of the city to go to work, school or visit family and friends, until one night in August 1961. Overnight, East German soldiers sealed off the border between the two halves of the city.
I watched workmen supervised by troops putting the finishing touches to the cement curtain through which no East German can pass.
The first and main shock we had was 61, when they built a wall right through a city. It was not an ordinary wall around a city to protect it from enemies, but it was a prison wall through a city. And we didn't believe this. We thought there is a responsibility of all the four allies, and they will hold this city together. But nobody did anything.
Boyfriends and girlfriends, parents and children, whole families suddenly found themselves on opposite sides of the wall. Even streets became divided.
The wall divided the street. So, for example, a young man and a young girl who loved each other couldn't see each other anymore when the wall was built, because the wall was built exactly at the street. And neighbors, families, they could see each other, but they couldn't go to each other because the wall divided the street. And I think this is a symbol for divided Berlin, for divided Europe, and for divided world at that time.
Houses along the border were bricked up. People made desperate bids to escape across the border into the West. Some even died trying. Teenager Peter Fechter was the first to lose his life, shot by border guards.
We saw Peter Fechter bleeding and nobody helped him. He was right in front of the American soldiers. Nobody helped him. It was on the other side of the world. And it was a question of war and Cold War. Not peace, but Cold War was better than war.
Over the next few years, the authorities strengthened the barriers and it became known as the Berlin Wall.
You can see the first barrier where after the graveyard. After this there was electric fence, but if you touched it, you had no idea what happened if you are somebody who wants to flee. But the soldiers in the watchtower, they got a signal that there is somebody. And then came the inner wall, which was not so high. And behind this inner wall, there was something like on the floor with needles on it. So if you jumped over the inner wall, you landed in needles, 10 centimeter high needles. Then the original death strip with bunkers and soldiers, they got permittance from their system, from the government, to shoot to everybody who is near there.
As the Berlin Wall became harder to cross, people came up with more and more ambitious ideas to help friends and families escape from East Berlin. This house is where one of the most dramatic escapes took place. A group of students from the West spent months building a tunnel 135 meters long under the wall and into the cellar of this house in East Berlin.
Nicht jeder konnte in solche enge Röhre reinkriechen, denn manche sagten, wir würden gerne helfen, wir machen auch sehr gerne schwere
Not everyone was able to crawl into such a tight tunnel. Some said, we would like to help, we're happy to do hard labour. but we can't enter such a tight tunnel, especially not as we know that we'll be under East German territory, and our thoughts would focus on what would happen if the tunnel would be discovered or we would be trapped.
An den Seiten lagen also auch Tunnelgräber oder saßen.
People who dug the tunnel lay on both sides. They calmed the refugees down. Stay calm, they said, to avoid panic, and they passed my baby along. We had to crawl on all fours. It might have been possible to do this on your own, but it was calming. And we crawled for 135 or 136 meters and climbed up the stairs. Then I fainted for the first and last time in my life. Then my child arrived and the whole situation was totally exceptional.
Kam auch gleich das Kind und dann hatte man war auch so in Ausnahmesituation.